you never really know what a person has or is dealing with. You can walk right by them and they can have a smile on their face and look like they've got their life together and everything is great, but you really don't know like what kind of battles they're fighting inside.
Hey there, my name is Sean, and this is Suicide Noted. On this podcast, I talk with suicide attempt survivors so that we can hear their stories. Every year around the world, millions of people try to take their own lives, and we almost never talk about it. We certainly don't talk about it enough. And when we do talk about it, many of us, including me, we're not very good at it. So one of my goals with this podcast is to have more conversations, hopefully better conversations with attempt survivors, in large part to help more people in more places feel a little less shitty and a little less alone. Now, if you are a suicide attempt survivor and you'd like to talk, please reach out. hello@suicidenoted.com. As a backup, just in case, suicidenoted@gmail.com. You can reach out to us on Facebook or Twitter/X, which I don't check very often, but nonetheless, at Suicide Noted. A week from tomorrow, in the final week of May, I will be heading out to a conference to talk about this podcast, west of Denver. And I want to thank Deanna, who is a listener and a supporter, who made this all happen, invited me, as well as a few of our guests who will be co-presenting either live there or virtually. So I think it's a wonderful opportunity for both me and our guests to talk more about this stuff. You can learn more about this podcast if you check the show notes, and that includes our membership. Special thanks to our members and our lifetime members, Helena and Mo, who gave a large financial contribution, and it really does help. And a special thanks as well to Elizabeth, a guest who has been helping me a lot in the last few months with the podcast. Whether you talk about it, whether you listen to this, or whatever you're doing to have more honest and open conversations about this rather taboo subject, I thank you. I really do. Now, it comes as no surprise that we are talking about suicide on this podcast, and I do not hold back. So please take that into account before you listen or as you listen. But I do hope you listen because there is so much to learn. Today, I am talking with Lisa. Lisa lives in Florida, and she is a suicide attempt survivor. Hey, Lisa.
How are you?
You're in a car. Shocker. Everybody's in a car lately when they talk to me.
I was at work. I don't have any place private at work, so.
Yes, we can't have these conversations sometimes wherever we want. It might also signify fewer and fewer spaces that are private, so we have to go in our fucking car.
Yes.
What kind of car are you in?
It's a Mazda.
A Mazda. Okay. Where are you?
I am in Orlando.
My niece goes to school there. She does. Rollins.
Oh, that's not too far. Yeah.
I went to the University of Florida.
Oh, okay.
All right. So you don't give a shit, I can tell. That's fine. I'm not offended. We're not here to talk about the Gators. I understand. So thanks for connecting with me.
Yes. I'm glad you're feeling better.
Yeah, I had COVID.
That's fun.
So we postponed this. Yeah, no, it was wonderful. Have you had COVID?
Just once, back in January of 21, actually.
How many suicide attempts do you have?
I don't know if I'd actually call them attempts, but I've had a lot of close calls.
When was the last close call?
Probably about a month ago.
And you're open to talking about this with me?
Really, what it is there's still, I think, a lot I haven't said out loud. I feel like this podcast is probably like, it's me saying it out loud, but not feeling like everybody is hearing me. Although there's still going to be a lot of people listening, but it doesn't feel like a lot of people listening.
Right.
Like it's just a conversation.
You won't know who's hearing it. They're probably not till I come to Orlando. Be like, hey, Lisa, let's get a drink. I just flew in from Denmark. I heard the podcast. They're not going to be able to find you unless, I don't know how they would do that.
Right.
So do you think you'll share this with anyone when it comes out?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Possibly.
So how did it come to be that you are searching for something online or on a podcast platform with the word suicide in it?
Well, I think what it really boiled down to was I don't really have a lot of people who understand around me. And I kind of just felt like I needed to know that there was more than just me that was dealing with this. I know that there's more than just me. I'm a mental health coach. So I
Ooh.
understand, yes, but sometimes even in all of that, it still feels like it's just me. I'm the only one dealing with it. And so it's just I was kind of looking for some kind of, I guess, solace in the moment.
But yet you're here. Because what happens sometimes is someone will reach out and I don't hear back from them. And I can only guess that they hear it, or maybe they've been listening to it and they like this, I gotta do this, but then they no, that was just a moment. I just reached out. I don't want to do it. It's too much, it's too soon. But you're here, so I appreciate that. That's a little different.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like when I found your podcast, I literally started at episode 1 and probably listened, I don't know, maybe like 100 episodes or something. With every episode that I've listened to, I was like, no, I really need to do this.
Gotcha. So it was sort of a building thing, right? It was building.
Yeah.
I wonder how I've changed. I mean, just the way I engage with people, the questions maybe that I ask. I'm sure that I'm not the exact same as I was, 3, 4 years ago.
No, it definitely sounds like when you're talking to people now, like you're more comfortable in asking questions and maybe even just the understanding of why you're doing it.
Says the mental health coach. I love it. So you said earlier that you don't have a lot of people that understand. And when you say you don't have a lot of people, and I imagine like that you can talk to in your life, maybe even in real life. When you say that, do you mean zero people or just not a lot of people?
Well, I mean, like I have my therapist, and there's like one other person who has kind of been through some stuff and, suicidal ideation and all of that. But I tend to not want to talk to her because she is quite a bit younger than me. I mean, like she could be my daughter, and so there have been moments that I've helped her through, but I don't want to put that on her. So I don't really talk to her much. Like she knows what I've gone through, and but I don't like reach out to her when I'm struggling.
That makes sense. So you find the podcast, you listen, eventually you reach out. We're talking. You may not share it with people. You have had a lot of close calls. You said the most recent one was about a month ago. When do you recall, when did you first start to feel like maybe I don't want to be alive?
I think it probably started maybe like towards the end of middle school, beginning of high school. I grew up in a very abusive home. And then I was also sexually abused by a relative with it that lasted for about 10 years. And so I think it's when I started to get into middle school and high school, I think I really started to understand the repercussions of everything that was happening. And I started really taking on kind of like a shame and guilt, like everything was my fault kind of thing.
Mhm.
And so I really started to process through like, well, maybe because everything is my fault, it would just be easier if I wasn't here.
Mm-hmm. When was the first close call?
The first close call didn't happen until I was a junior in high school.
Okay.
So that was back in like 97, 98. I had been through, a lot, and I was still carrying a lot of the shame and guilt. And actually, like nobody knew. I never
Mm.
said anything about the sexual abuse that was happening. As far as I knew, my parents didn't know about it. So I was holding a lot in, which, is not healthy. So I actually had come up with a plan that I was going to one night just I was a meth addict by then. No.
You were what? A meth addict? For someone like me and maybe a lot of others who don't know much about that, particularly meth, like you're able to go to class?
Yeah, so the weird thing is I actually functioned better while I was on it, and it helped to numb a lot. Meth was like my American Express card. I never left home without it. I never went home without it either. I was never without it.
Just to be clear, we're not endorsing American Express directly here. So American Express never leave home without it. And in your version with meth, never go home without it either. Makes total sense if you're numbing the pain, and I'm not encouraging drug use here, but it makes total sense. It numbs the pain and you're functioning better, or at least you felt that way. I don't know if we can even measure such a thing, right? But I get why people would do that. 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. And I watched a video with John Christ not too long ago and his addiction. And it was really talking about how in the moment, addiction actually helped you survive.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
looking back on it, that's what it was. It was a coping
Right.
mechanism, really. So yeah, I had planned to like I bought enough meth to like kind of just numb me out, and then I had planned on like just slitting my wrists. So I was going to be numb enough that I wouldn't even like really feel it.
Didn't happen?
No, it didn't. I was sitting in my room that night and I was just like, I can't do it. Couldn't go through with it. I had the razor blade in my hand, but I just couldn't do it.
What stopped you?
Looking back on it, I think I knew that I had purpose in life. I just didn't know at the time what it was.
When do you or do you get off meth?
I actually stopped meth. I went cold turkey, which I don't recommend to anybody. That was horrible. But I stopped when I was 19.
Okay. So nobody finds out about the fact that you were assaulted for a long time.
Right. No, nobody knew, not even my husband. My husband and I were married for 17 years before I even told him.
Nobody finds out that you almost ended your life at 17 years old, 16 years old. Does anybody know today? How many people knew about the fact that you were regularly using meth in high school?
Mainly the people that I was doing it with. And then I had a couple of managers that I worked for. Bless them. They loved it actually when I came in, and they knew that I was tweaking
Oh, no.
because the whole place was clean, everything was done.
Were you in the service restaurant field? Yeah. It's probably so common in that field.
It really is. I mean, I don't think there was one person that I worked with that didn't do something.
That was the first one. The last one was about a month ago. So if my math is correct, 25 years go by.
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah.
How many close calls have you had in that time?
Maybe close to a dozen.
So this is happening, I wouldn't say regularly, but there's not a particularly long, many years period of time where it's not a thought.
Right. I mean, I still have suicidal ideation pretty much daily.
So in that 25 plus years, how often, and I know these are some tricky questions, but how often are you thinking about this? Is it like once in a while or is it many times a day?
I think it really depends on where my mental state is at the
Mhm.
time. There are moments where it's all I think about. And there have been times when it's just been like a thought. One thought comes in during the day and then it leaves, and then I don't think about it for the rest of the day. So it really kind of fluctuates depending on where I'm at mentally.
Mhm. How do you get out of it?
Gosh, when I'm in it, it's so hard to get out of it. It's really taken me a long time to learn how to talk about what I'm dealing with. So I just started talking about it probably maybe like 7 years ago, openly. The abuse, the sexual abuse, the suicidal ideation, like all of it, really just started talking
Mm.
about it with the amount of abuse that I suffered. In reality, it's kind of a short period of time in the healing process. Going to a therapist, I have a great counselor. I absolutely love her. Learning how to be kind of vulnerable with my own
Mhm.
husband, which has been kind of a learning curve for me as well, because being open and vulnerable to somebody that I'm supposed to trust has never been a thing in my life. Trying to learn how to talk about it more
Mm.
really is kind of what's helping the most. Is yeah, and then I'm also doing EMDR.
How's that going?
It's going good. There's people are like, oh, you only have to do EMDR for, like however long, like a short period of time. I've been doing EMDR for a year, just because I have to process through so many memories.
What happened 7 years ago that you started talking about it?
Crazy thing, I started working. I actually work at a church, and one of my coworkers just started asking me questions about the way I grew up and, just trying to get to know me kind of stuff. And for a long time, I would never answer any questions that she had. And finally, I was just like, do you really want to know? Because I'll tell
Mm.
you. I just kind of let it all out at that point. That actually was a good thing and a bad thing at the same time, because floodgates opened and I had suppressed stuff for so long that when I did start to talk about it, like I spiraled really fast.
Right. So this is one of the things that you hear a lot in the mental health space, in my experience. Just talk about it, and it's like there's an asterisk there. Be careful. So in your case, that's a perfect example. There's other examples where we know when you just talk about it, depending on how you're talking about it and where you're talking about it and who you're talking about it to, not everyone's open to hearing it. Not everyone treats you nicely. That could be harmful. So I'm
Right.
not dissuading people from talking about it. My God, I have a podcast. That would be a mistake, but I get it. Just
Yeah.
talk about it. Like that's sloppy advice at best. Anyway, I'm on my pedestal again, Lisa. Just knock me the fuck off that because I don't belong there. Did you say that you cut out for a moment earlier? You say you worked or work at a church?
I do currently work at a church. Yeah.
So do you have a faith you adhere to?
Yeah. I'm part of the Assemblies of God denomination.
What does that mean?
It's really just a Protestant or Pentecostal, Christian.
This is actually interesting. These conversations usually have a little more like, this is what happened first. This is what happened. But I kind of like this because we're moving in different directions. So, all right, listeners, pay attention. Lisa and I are going in different places. Buckle up. But do those who adhere to that faith believe in heaven or hell?
Yeah.
Do those, if you know, who believe in that faith, what are their thoughts, if you know, on suicide?
I think it's kind of a sticky, kind of messy subject. Some of them believe that if you do take your own life, you're going to hell. I've talked to others, even within my own church, that think that you can ask forgiveness like as soon as you do it, and you're still going to heaven, depending on who you talk to. And I think that's with any church, really, depending on who you talk to. The beliefs are a little bit different on that because I don't think it's very clear, even in the Bible, what happens.
Well, I'm not much of a man of faith. Have a pretty good idea. I know what Jesus would say. Think he'd be pretty nice about it. If he had a tattoo, and I don't think he did, it might be like forgiveness or a symbol of that. So, okay,
Right.
you were suffering. You made a choice. Have you belonged to this church or denomination for a long time?
I have been at this particular church for about 16 years. I've worked there for 8.
Did you grow up going to church?
I grew up in and out of a Catholic church, actually. My parents went to church for a little while and then stopped going when I was probably in maybe 6th grade. But
Okay.
my grandparents were very, very devout Catholic.
So did you sort of leave that and eventually find your way back to religion?
Oh, yeah, I totally. At one point, I was an atheist.
Well, I'm curious, what got you back to believing?
It was really weird. So my husband was in the army, so we were stationed in Hawaii actually for a little while.
Nice.
I know it's a rough life.
Yeah, it's awful.
We met a couple out in Hawaii. They just invited me and my husband out to one of the Easter services, and we went just kind of to be nice, really. While I was at the service, they did a whole production on the crucifixion of Jesus and the
Oh,
resurrection of him, and I was just like, wow, like he did that for me. It hit me at that moment, and so that kind of is what started my journey of coming back.
yeah. So a month ago, you had a close call. Was that the same method as the first time? And I'll ask about the other times at some point too. Was it going to be razor blade?
Yes, there was no meth involved at that time, but yes,
No meth, same method.
yeah.
What stopped you?
I think probably really thinking about, because now I'm married, I've got kids. I literally was like sitting on my living room couch in the middle of the night getting ready to do it, like right there on the couch. Just kind of started thinking like about the kids. They don't need to see that, how much it would hurt them if I did do that. And like even just thinking my husband, like I would leave him with all 4 kids and the responsibility of handling everything on his own. Yeah, I mean, it was really just thinking about the kids and my husband.
4 kids. Busy person, busy mother, busy human.
Yes.
Here's a question that I think I'm asking less so from my perspective, but more from people who may not really get this stuff. And look, I know they may not be listening to this, but they might be. If you know that you don't want to, and I'm paraphrasing here, so forgive me if I'm a little off, have your kids or your husband see this or experience this, how do you end up on that couch in the middle of the night in the first place?
I actually had been triggered due to a very close friend of mine who told me that her daughter was just sexually abused by a family member.
Mm.
And so it kind of, you know, memories, flashbacks, all of the pain coming back, a lot of emotion, a lot of pain. It got to a point where I'm just like, I don't know if I can handle the amount of pain that I'm in right now. My own pain. And then also, like, I was angry for my friend's daughter. And I was kind of feeling, you know, like I know her pain. It just kind of spiraled from there. The thoughts started bombarding me and just kind of went from there.
Is that similar to the other attempts or the near attempts? Do you see a pattern? I guess is the best way to ask that question. That you get triggered.
Yeah, most of them are me being triggered by something. Even like a past abuse, there was like cardboard boxes involved. And like there was a point where just seeing a cardboard box would trigger me and I could spiral out of control just from seeing a cardboard box. Thankfully, EMDR has helped with that one a lot. Yeah, I mean, it was just, you know, like things, smells, just hearing certain things. I got triggered once because I found out that my parents allowed my abuser to move into their house. So anytime I would call and talk to my parents, I would hear his voice in the background. It was a lot.
Kind of makes sense how some people, in order to sort of like minimize the possibility of being triggered, just maybe they stay at home a lot. Maybe they just to control the environment because it's less likely that's going to happen. Like, I get that. I kind of do that.
Yeah, I actually tend to make myself busy. I overdo it until I get completely just exhausted and can't go anymore.
If somebody were, whether they're a fly on the wall or whatever, they were to see you and you get triggered, and then maybe sometimes it leads to sitting on your couch in the middle of the night or wherever, would we see it? Would we see, oh shit, Lisa is melting?
No, actually, I'm really good at putting on masks. A lot of the times, nobody would know that there was anything wrong with me until I got to that point where I was just ready to be done.
How do you feel about being alive? Ooh, that's not a big question, Sean.
I still believe that I have a purpose. There are definitely days when I am like, I don't care about purpose. I just want to be done. But I try to remember, like, it's not, I try to take the focus off of me. And I actually do better when I focus on other people and helping other people. I try to just focus on that instead of allowing myself to dwell on my own thoughts. So
Yeah. So there are people in the world that know that you have had these near attempts other than your therapist. Sounds like she or he does because you say they're really good. And
yeah, she definitely knows.
how many other people know?
My husband knows. A lot of the ladies at my church know because I have given my testimony. Our church is actually really good about addressing mental health. A lot of churches kind of shun it. A lot of people in the Christian community can be judgmental because they don't understand it really. But our church is really good about actually addressing it. So we have things called God Encounters where we bring people in, and I actually talked about my story a little bit, kind of some of the stuff that I've been through, and you know, even the walking through forgiving my own dad for the physical abuse and my family member who sexually abused me, although forgiveness is kind of a daily thing. Yeah, so a lot of the ladies at the church know because it was a ladies event that I spoke at, but they don't know that I still struggle sometimes. Our church is actually really good about dealing with stuff in the present. The not talking about it in the present is more my own insecurities. There's some people in the church that are more, I don't think I don't want to say understanding, but I don't know if that's the right word because it's hard to understand it if you haven't been through it, but more, I guess, compassionate if you're still going through it. And then obviously with every church, there's going to be judgmental people. I mean, the good thing about our church is we have a counseling department within our church that, you know, we have mental health counselors, we have mental health coaches, we have pastoral counselors. So it's, I mean, we really address things that are happening in the present. I have a hard time saying I'm struggling, like in the present. But I think that's also has to do a lot with childhood because anytime I spoke up about feelings, I was told to grow up, get over it. I got, you know, slapped around. You know, I was never allowed to express myself.
Yeah, that's not an easy thing to undo. So I'm going to ask you a question now. Are you struggling? So are you at the church parking lot right now?
No, I am actually in the parking lot of a park.
Did you tell anybody, husband, therapist, ladies, others, that you're talking with me today?
No,
Will you tell people?
I'm not sure. I think if I were to tell anybody, it would probably be my therapist.
Because I'm always curious about people's experiences, not just like kind of this is what I went through, but even in like hearing a podcast like this or like hearing themselves on a podcast like this. Do you think you'll listen to your own voice, which I know can maybe be the hardest thing?
I think I might make myself
Right.
only because I think I need to hear it. I need to hear that I'm saying I'm struggling.
Uh huh.
Yeah.
When you think about the reasons why you came close to dying by your own hand, is there a why? That's essentially the no question. You know, you're not supposed to ask somebody why, but I am curious. Is there a why?
I really think that the biggest reason is because I really blamed myself for everything that happened. The physical abuse from my dad, I even like the sexual abuse more so because I don't know, I've just always had this thought in my head that I did something to provoke it, or I did something to deserve it. Just the thought of that has always made me just feel dirty. I've spent basically my entire life just feeling damaged,
Hmm.
broken. I don't want to feel damaged anymore.
Yeah. I sometimes think about like the secrets we keep for obviously understandable reasons. And I think about like, especially, you know, younger people, middle school, high school, 20s, whatever. You could be in the same room as people who have gone through something similar, but nobody's talking about it. Attempting suicide, having been assaulted, other things. And so there you
Yeah.
are in high school feeling the way you're feeling. And there might be other women, young men too, dealing with this, but we don't talk about it. And I get it. I'm not saying what should be done. I'm just saying the fact that, wow, it's all there.
Yeah, absolutely. Even just being like a mental health coach, I'm learning how many people in the church are even dealing with that kind of stuff in their past, or even dealing with it now. You never really know what a person has or is dealing with. You can walk right by them and they can have a smile on their face and look like they've got their life together and everything is great, but you really don't know like what kind of battles they're fighting inside.
For sure. How long have you been going to a therapist for?
I started going to a therapist shortly after I kind of blurted everything out to that coworker, which was in 2018, maybe. I was seeing one of the therapists that we had at the church for about a year. And then I switched over to this new one. I call her new. I've been seeing her for a while, but then I switched over to this one.
It's a woman.
Yeah.
Has she ever diagnosed you with anything you think is accurate?
So, funny thing, nobody has ever given me an actual diagnosis.
Wow.
I
It's
know.
2024. Nobody's giving you a diagnosis.
Crazy thing. I'm on antidepressants. I'm on anxiety medication, but nobody has ever told me you have.
I'm going to ask you, what do you think you have, if anything?
I know there's a lot of anxiety that I have. I know it's got to be like major depression just because of the episodes that I've been through,
Mhm.
and just kind of doing my own research on it. Yeah, the rest of it I'm not really sure.
I mean, I know a lot of people who have dealt with what you've dealt with are dealing with some form of PTSD or CPTSD, right?
Yeah, I definitely actually it's definitely possible for CPTSD.
With the understanding that it's possible your husband might hear this, but can you talk to him about this stuff? And I don't mean just mention it. I mean, talk.
Yeah, well, I'm learning. My therapist is actually working on me, or working with me on learning how to communicate with him. Just because I've held so much inside, and never really, like again, I was never allowed to express myself to anybody that I should have been allowed to be vulnerable with growing up. So even with him, I find myself when I try and talk to him, I tend to shut down, and then I can't talk. So we're learning. I'm in the learning process of communicating with him.
Is there any risk that this new you he might not like?
I don't think so. He's actually been very understanding and helpful through all of it. So once I did kind of communicate a little bit of what was going on, he's been a huge, huge support.
All right, go husband.
Yeah. Yeah. I listen, that man, I can't even
Hmm.
express like what he has done.
When you think about not just the near attempts, the stuff that life in between as well. Do you ever have any regrets? And to be really explicit about this, like, I wish I had done the thing or tried.
I do. A lot of it goes back to if I had actually gone through with it in high school, then my kids wouldn't have to watch me suffer. I wouldn't be putting my husband through all of this either. And so I do. I think back a lot on I should have just done it in high school.
You specifically go back to the first one or two early.
Yeah.
Were you in Florida for those years?
No, actually I was in Missouri.
Missouri. The old classic Missouri to Florida connection, of course. So we've already, it's like, you don't have a ton of people to talk to. You'd said you have your therapist, you have one other woman, she's younger.
Yeah. I mean, I've got a great group of girlfriends that I could confide in, but they don't necessarily know what it's like to be that close to the edge, and they're in the Christian community too. So there's been a lot of the few times that I have opened up to them, it's been just very, well, you need to do this and you need to do that. And that's like, well, you don't think that if that would have worked, like I would have done it,
It's insulting.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not that I don't think trying to be not compassionate in it. I just think there's a lot of ignorance in it.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, but it's not helpful. It's not helpful. And, I have a really hard time communicating that with them, saying, hey, what you're saying to me is not helpful.
Why? I just wonder why people somewhat often assume that when you're sharing something with them, not that you're asking for that kind of response, but how is that ever a response that makes sense? I don't really get it.
Yeah, I don't really either. I try to justify in my head is just because they're ignorant in the situation. But I don't know. I mean, that's just me probably trying to justify it, but
sure. And yeah, I get that. I don't know, and I don't know them, and I'm not throwing shade or blame on them. It's just interesting because it doesn't really feel like the kind of thing that's necessarily about mental health, let's say, or suffering. It's just more around how you communicate with people. They're different things. Yeah, like I understand the thing we're talking about, we've all dealt with. It's a different conversation maybe, but the irony is if you listen well and you connect with somebody and you sort of create that kind of a space, should it come up that they tell you what to do, not that they would, you're even more likely to listen. Like if you don't do that, then unless it's like an 8-year-old kid who kind of has no choice but to listen to his parents said, you need to do this. I don't think adults listen to that kind of language almost ever.
Yeah, because I think a lot of times adults want to always fix the problem. One, it's not their problem to fix. And two, like you can't fix it because what happened. And two, there's a lot that I have to process through. Sometimes the processing hurts, but I have to go through it. And so sometimes I just need to be able to voice what I'm feeling without you coming back and telling me what I should or should not do.
And how many times does that have to happen before? And this might not apply to you necessarily, but others before they're like, you know what? I'm not going to talk to them, at least not about that. It does not have to happen more than once or twice.
Right. And that's kind of where I'm at now. Like, they're great friends. I absolutely love them. I consider them my sisters, but that is one subject I don't really talk much about anymore with them.
It's just a shame that people sometimes make the assumption that if someone's sharing something difficult with them, they interpret that as you're asking to be fixed, which is not what's happening.
Right.
The way you would know if someone wants to be fixed, or even let's use softer language, is looking for advice, is they'll ask you. It's so simple. I'm looking for some help with this. I'm looking to see what doctor you suggest. It's just weird.
And I don't think people realize how much damage it causes.
I often wonder or think about like when people say, well, they just won't open up to me. They won't talk to me anymore. I'm like, I wish I could have a little like 10-year video capture of these little moments in which you were interacting with this person and just see what that was like. And maybe there were things you said, and maybe that's one of the reasons why they're not so quick to share stuff with you. It's complicated. I don't mean to simplify it, but you're doing something that I have in my life struggled hard to do, is when someone doesn't allow me to talk in a certain way about that kind of stuff, I'm not really friends with them. So I admire people who are like, no, I can be friends with them. I just won't talk about certain things and it's okay. We'll find common ground.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you're feeling shitty, what helps, if anything?
Getting outside and getting moving, which is actually really kind of hard for me right now because in the springtime I am allergic to the outside. In Florida, I'm allergic to oak trees and there's oak trees everywhere. So I can't really get outside and get moving, like I would like to, because then I have to end up taking Benadryl every 4 hours. But that's one thing that really helps is actually being outside. I don't know if it's just like being in the sun and getting that vitamin D, or, like I love to look at trees and just scenery and, like being by creeks or rivers or something, it's very calming for me.
And the tree I see behind you, is that an oak tree? Probably comes as no surprise that I'm not much of a botany guy. So you've never had a hospital stay, mental health related?
I have not, but I probably should have many times.
I know you had your period of time for at least a few years or a couple years doing meth. Did you ever drink or drug after that excessively?
Excessively, no. I have not touched any type of drugs recreationally since I quit meth. Only because I know that if I do, it's over. Like I'm gonna go down that hole, and I'm gonna go down it fast.
Yeah.
Drinking, I didn't do it excessively, but when you turn 21, you go out and you drink. So I did have a little bit of a period where I was going out to clubs and all of that, but I don't drink anymore either. So
Wow. It sounds like over the years there was a fair amount of what we call white knuckling.
oh yeah, I mean there's still a lot of white knuckling.
Yeah. It's got to be tiring as fuck, as we say. Capital A, capital F. Excuse my French.
It's exhausting. I'm even at the point where, like, when the doctors want to prescribe me narcotics, I'm like, no, just what is the strongest Tylenol I can take? Because I don't even want to take the chance.
That is not a suicidal mind. Maybe I'm not understanding it. Maybe it is. I don't know. Is it?
It's really because I don't want to get hooked on depending on something to get me through. Yeah, I get to these places where I don't want to be here anymore mentally, but sometimes I feel like I need to get to those places in order to get to the next level of my healing. Yeah, I don't want to go back into, just depending on coping mechanisms, especially the unhealthy ones. I don't want the kids to see me as a drug addict.
Sure.
In high school I was pretty high functioning on it, but who's to say what I would be like now? Yeah, I don't want them to see me like completely, like lose my mind. And we see there's a lot of homeless people around here that are on all kinds of stuff, and you see them and they're not in their right mind. And
Yeah.
I don't want the kids to see me in that state of mind. And so I think about that a lot. Yeah, I don't want to become dependent on something.
Yeah. If you've only listened to, not only, but if you've listened up to about episode 100 or whatever, you don't know about the pink and purple pill question, do you?
Actually, I do, because I have listened to the last couple of weeks, the ones that you put out on Mondays.
All right. So just for our listeners, because maybe they haven't heard it, I give Lisa this pill and she goes to sleep and she's not in any pain. She doesn't wake up and nobody knows it's a suicide. She just died in her sleep. Do you take the pill?
I think I would actually probably hold on to it.
Better keep that shit away from the kids.
Yeah, that, like on my body at all times.
I just want to say this, and I don't think I've ever said this before. In the unlikely event somebody's listening and they're going to Google pink and purple quill, it's not real. I just made it all up. Do you have any, are there any myths or misconceptions about any of this stuff? Suicide related, drug related, assault related, whatever else related?
I think one is it's not that easy to just get over. A lot of people are just like, hey, just get over it. It's not that easy. Like, you can't just get over sexual assault that's happened for a decade. You can't just get over an entire childhood of being physically abused. You can't just get over depression. Like, it doesn't work that way. And then I think another one is really involving like the church. I think a lot of people think that everyone in the church, or that nobody in the church is suffering, when in reality, there's a lot of people in the church that are suffering and just don't know it, because, the Christian community likes to walk around Well, I mean, it's in any community, but we walk around with masks on and pretend that everything is okay. I always tell people the church is like a hospital. There's broken people in the church too, and just because we're a Christian doesn't mean that we have it all together.
Yeah. By the way, as far as when you had said just get over it and just whatever else, I guess got to give a quick communication tip to people. And I got a lot to learn about communicating. Don't get me wrong. Take just out of your vocabulary when you're ever talking to somebody that's in pain. It'll be better.
100%.
And it still makes grammatical sense. Now, to say to somebody, get over it, as opposed to just, well, you're still a jerk. Okay. So it doesn't mean that, but like, start there.
Yeah, I think using the word just makes it sound like it's an easy thing to do.
Totally. I should blame Nike for that and their damn slogan. You had said earlier that you, at least on one occasion, it sounds like more than that, you've shared your story at the church with the ladies. Given that you've done that, given that I'm kind of obsessed with memoir titles, I don't know if you've heard that in the other podcasts. You may have.
I have.
Usually, because it's a gift, I come up with it myself. I give myself license to do that. I don't know. What do you think it is?
That's a good question. Yeah, I don't know what my memoir would be.
You don't have to tell us. We don't have to know, but it might come to you at some point. Maybe when you're driving back from the park to the church. Son of a gun. That's it.
I mean, I always tell people, even in like when I'm doing sessions in mental health coaching, I always tell them healing is a process. Maybe that's part of it. Maybe
it's a process. Tell me about mental health coaching.
Well, I got involved in it in the church really because I wanted to help other people who are dealing with really like trauma. Like I really love helping people in trauma, not just like dealing with, marital issues, or not to say that those aren't important. I want to be in the trenches with the people who are sitting on their couch in the middle of the night with razor blades in their hands.
Sorry, I want to hear more. That's connected to the memoir title. It's possible. Something about a couch. Lisa, it's a gift. Just say yes. Okay, let's move on.
Yeah, absolutely. I took some courses to do mental health coaching. My heart in it really is to work with the kids and the youth. I really believe that the kids who are in trauma, if we can get them into therapy and if we can get them on the right track as a child, their adulthood, not to say that it's going to be perfect, but it will be better. So, I really love working with the kids and the youth. Yeah, like when I'm in a session, I really just sit there and I'm like, this is what I'm meant to do. Like, I absolutely love it.
Which is the thing, or one of the things that kept you alive.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
The search for that.
Yeah.
When did you become a coach?
I became a coach, I think 2 years ago.
That's a long search.
Yeah, but before I became a mental health coach, I was still volunteering in our counseling department as a biblical lay counselor. And then I was part of our inner healing team, which has kind of been disbanded right now, but it's more prayer focused healing. I also got some training to be an ambassador at the church, which for people who are like coming to the altar for prayer and stuff like that, if they're in crisis, the altar team is not necessarily trained to deal with people in crisis. So if somebody comes to the altar, they can hand them off to an ambassador who is a little bit more trained. So then I have ambassadorship, I have mental health coaching, and then I'm also a chaplain in the ambassador team. So I have a little bit of, that background too. So like, that's what I do. I help people. Helping people helps me. There you go. That's what it is.
Got to be part of the memoir title. Sounds like a big church, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, we have probably like 7,000 people come through in a week.
So we're not talking your little rinky-dink Southern church on in the backwoods here with, a congregation of 35 people in the pews every Sunday.
No.
Is this one of these mega churches?
It's considered a mega church. I don't know how like well known it is like nationally.
In your near attempts, was it always the same method?
Yeah.
Something about the blade.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think what it is, because I did a lot of cutting when I was younger. I think it's the physicalness of the blade that really sticks out to me. Like when I cut, I'm like, okay, now I have an actual wound to go with the pain.
Makes sense. Do you think that you will die in quote unquote natural death?
I hope so. I mean, I can't really know the future, but yeah, I hope.
What else would you like to share, Lisa, in Florida?
The one thing that I would really love to share, maybe those who have a loved one or a friend who's dealing with mental health issues or even like suicidal ideation, like don't tell them that you're there for them if you can't be. I've had that happen to me several times, and that really it did a lot of emotional damage to me. There was a night I called like 7 people because it was really on the brink. It was the 7th person that was finally like, okay, I'll come sit with you. But then I had, like 2 people tell me afterwards, like, hey, I can't be friends with you anymore. But those are friends who had told me, I'm here for you, whatever you need. And that was one of them was like 10 years worth of friendship. If you can't support somebody going through this issue, be upfront with them. Like, don't tell them that you're going to be there for them and then turn around and not do it.
No points for just saying the words.
Yeah. Like if you say it, you need to follow through with it.
Well, thanks for talking.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Sure. What are you going to do for the rest of the day? You going back to the church?
Yeah, we have service tonight, so I have to work.
Your kids and husband go to that?
Yeah.
So you go back to the church now. It's mid-afternoon, and then later you see your family at the church.
Yeah.
It's not bad.
Yeah. The kids love it. My kids don't know any other place. They've been in that church since they were babies. So.
Wow. Are you an Orlando Magic fan, or do you not care?
I don't really watch basketball. I went to a Magic game actually last week because my daughter is in dance and she danced at the pregame show.
Oh, wow. Cool.
I don't know. I couldn't focus on the game. Like I think I have ADD. I really was more focused on the people cleaning the other side of the court that nobody was on instead of like what was happening with the ball.
Right. I can see why you would focus on that than the basketball game. Sure. All right.
The only thing I watch is football.
Who do you like? Who's your team?
Chiefs. Yeah, I'm from Kansas City. So.
Oh, shit. So you were a Chiefs fan before they got good again?
Yes. I was a Chiefs fan back in the Alex Smith era in the, before Andy Reid and all of that. So
Arrowhead Stadium. Go Chiefs. Another Super Bowl under their belt. Well done. Okay, let's get back to our lives. You go to the church. I go, well, I'm probably just staying here at my kitchen table. Thanks again for talking.
Thank you.
As always, thanks so much for listening and all of your support, and special thanks to Lisa down in Florida. Thanks again, Lisa. If you are a suicide attempt survivor and you'd like to talk, please reach out. hello@suicidenoted.com. As a backup, just in case, suicidenoted@gmail.com. You can also message us on Facebook or Twitter/X @suicidenoted. And you can check the show notes to learn more about the podcast, including our membership. However you are involved, you participate, you support us, thanks very much. And that is all for episode number 213. Stay strong. Do the best you can. I'll talk to you soon.